Imagine being stripped of everything: your family, your home, your dignity, reduced to nothing but a number in a place where death is routine and hope is an illusion. In Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl takes us inside the unspeakable horrors of Nazi concentration camps, not to recount mere suffering, but to reveal a profound truth. Even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, human beings can endure if they find meaning in their existence. This is not just a memoir of survival. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Frankl, a psychiatrist, transforms his agony into insight, showing that our greatest freedom lies in our ability to choose our response to suffering. He introduces logotherapy, a revolutionary idea that meaning, not pleasure or power, is the primary driver of life. This book is more than a story. It is a guide to discovering purpose in even the darkest moments. Let's begin with Chapter 1, Arrival at Auschwitz. A train filled with prisoners, tightly packed into cattle cars, moved through the darkness toward an unknown destination. The people inside, exhausted from days without food or water, could only guess where they were being taken. The train stopped at a station, and through the cracks in the wooden walls, a single word could be seen painted on a sign: Auschwitz. The name meant nothing to most of them. There were whispers among the prisoners. Some had heard rumors that this place was either a labor camp or a death camp. No one knew for sure. The air was thick with tension. The doors of the train cars burst open. Armed guards ordered the prisoners to climb down. Harsh voices barked commands in a language that many did not understand. Bright spotlights cut through the night, blinding those who had just emerged from the darkness of the train. Men and women clutched the few belongings they had been allowed to bring, though most would soon realize that these, too, would be taken away. Everything happened quickly. The newly arrived were forced into separate lines, men on one side, women and children on the other. There was no time to say goodbye. Families were torn apart in an instant, some for the last time. The line moved forward, and standing at its head was a figure in uniform, motioning people to the left or the right. No explanations were given. Those sent to the right were led further into the camp. Those sent to the left disappeared behind a building, never to be seen again. Some people tried to step out of line to join their loved ones, but they were shoved back into place. Any attempt to resist was met with a rifle butt or worse. The prisoners quickly understood that obedience was the only way to stay alive. As the line moved forward, the ones who were still holding on to hope whispered to each other. Perhaps they would be put to work. Maybe they would be fed. There was no way of knowing the truth. The guards carried themselves with an air of indifference, as though this process was routine. It was clear that the people arriving were not seen as human beings. They were numbers. They were units to be used until they could no longer serve a purpose. The realization set in slowly, but for some, it came too late. Once selected, the prisoners were stripped of everything: their clothes, their documents, even their names. Hair was shaved off, reducing them all to the same faceless figures. Personal items were confiscated. Some people had hidden valuables, clinging to the belief that these things might be traded for food or protection. The moment their turn came, these last remnants of their former lives were taken. The process was designed to break them. Any sense of identity they had before stepping off the train was gone within hours. The newly processed prisoners were given uniforms, striped and shapeless, the same for all. The fabric was thin and offered little warmth against the cold. They were then assigned numbers, which would replace their names. The numbers were tattooed onto their skin, permanent reminders that they no longer belonged to themselves. Some looked down at their arms in disbelief, tracing the ink with their fingers. Others simply stared ahead, already understanding that resistance was useless. The barracks where they were sent were overcrowded. The air smelled of sweat, sickness, and despair. Hunger gnawed at their stomachs, but no food was given upon arrival. The body, already weak from the journey, had to endure a little longer. No explanations were given about what lay ahead. Those who had been in the camp longer knew better than to offer false hope. In the darkness of the barracks, whispers passed between the newly arrived. Some spoke of escape, though it was clear that none had succeeded before. Others still clung to the idea that if they worked hard enough, if they followed orders without question, they might survive. But even these voices were uncertain. There was no certainty in this place. The only truth was that each new day was a gift not granted all. As the first night came to an end, a distant whistle signaled the start of the next day. The prisoners were marched outside and forced into rows. The morning air was bitterly cold, but there was no time to dwell on it. Commands were shouted. Those who hesitated were struck down. The lesson was clear: follow orders or face consequences. The prisoners had not yet learned the full nature of this place, but one thing was already understood. Survival depended on obedience, endurance, and luck. The sun rose over Auschwitz, casting light over the camp. Smoke curled into the sky from chimneys in the distance, though few knew what they signified. The day had begun, and with it, Chapter 2, The Prisoner's Inner Life. The first few days inside the camp were the hardest. At first, there was shock, but soon that shock turned into a strange kind of detachment. When the guards struck with whips, when the cold bit into the skin, when a friend collapsed from exhaustion, there was no strong reaction anymore. Suffering became normal. The mind adjusted in ways that were difficult to explain. Instead of resisting, the body and mind accepted the new reality. Nothing mattered anymore except survival. Every day started with the same brutal routine. At dawn, a harsh voice would wake everyone, ordering them outside for roll call. The biting wind cut through thin, tattered uniforms, but there was no choice except to stand still for hours. Anyone who moved too much or fell from weakness risked being beaten. The stomach remained empty. Hunger was a constant companion. Even dreams at night were filled with images of food. Bread, soup, warm meals. All of them haunted the mind like a cruel joke. But no amount of longing changed the reality. The daily ration was just a small piece of bread and some watery soup with a few floating bits of vegetables, if lucky. Walking through the camp, it was easy to see the transformation happening to everyone. Expressions were blank, faces hollow. Conversations were few because words required energy, and there was no energy left to waste. It was not just the body that was starving. The spirit was slowly fading too. But even in such terrible conditions, the mind had its own way of coping. Some people held on to memories of their loved ones, thinking about past conversations, imagining their faces, recalling their laughter. These thoughts became an escape. There was no way of knowing if those loved ones were still alive, but the mind clung to them as if they were. It was proof that something still mattered beyond the present suffering. There was a strange thing about pain. It did not feel the same over time. In the beginning, every injury, every insult, every loss felt sharp and unbearable. But after a while, the mind became numb. When a fellow prisoner collapsed on the ground and was left behind, there were no tears. There was no way to help, and even if there was, self-preservation took over. Emotions were a luxury that could no longer be afforded. Watching a weak man being dragged away or seeing a friend die in the night became part of daily life. A year ago, such scenes would have been horrifying. Now, they barely registered. The body weakened faster than the mind. Feet swelled from starvation, and every step became a struggle. The skin turned pale, the ribs stuck out, and every movement felt slow. The cold made it worse, seeping deep into the bones. No amount of shivering could fight it off. But in the middle of all this suffering, there were moments of strange clarity. A sunrise in the distance, a bird flying freely in the sky, the simple beauty of a snow-covered branch. These small things took on a new meaning. They were reminders that the world outside still existed, that there was something beyond the barbed wire and the guards. Some people found strength in humor. It seemed impossible, yet even in the darkest moments, a joke could lighten the weight of suffering. Someone would make a comment about the soup or the absurdity of life inside the camp. And for a moment, there was laughter. It was brief but powerful. It showed that even here, there was still a choice to give in to despair or to fight back in whatever way possible. Dreams became another escape. At night, Thoughts drifted to warm beds, to meals shared with family, to past moments of happiness. These dreams felt real, so real that waking up to the camp again was the cruelest part of the day. But dreams also gave strength. They reminded that there was more to life than this. If survival was possible, then maybe one day, all of this would be nothing more than a memory. Some men gave up. It was easy to see when it happened. They stopped caring, stopped fighting. They no longer got up when a guard shouted. They no longer ate their bread. They simply lay down and waited for the end. There was nothing that could be said to them. Once the will to live was lost, no one could bring it back. But others held on, not because their bodies were stronger, but because their minds refused to break. They had something to live for, a family member, a purpose, a dream beyond the suffering. These were the ones who lasted the longest. Hope was dangerous but necessary. To believe that rescue might come, that freedom was possible, that this nightmare would end. These thoughts gave just enough strength to push forward. But there was also a risk. If hope was tied to a specific moment, like a rumor that the war would end by Christmas, disappointment could be deadly. When that day arrived and nothing changed, some men lost the will to continue. The key was to hope without expecting, to believe in a future without tying it to a fixed promise. The mind was the last thing that remained free. No guard could control thoughts. No hunger could take away memories. Even in the worst conditions, there was still the power to decide how to respond. This was the greatest truth that became clear over time. No matter what was taken away, no matter how much suffering was endured, there was still a choice. And that choice made all the difference between those who survived and those who did not. This was just as grueling as the morning journey. The prisoners, drained of energy, trudged through the deep snow. Some collapsed from exhaustion, and those who could not rise were simply abandoned. The guard showed no mercy. A single gunshot ended the struggle of anyone who could no longer stand. Back at the barracks, another bowl of soup was handed out. Again, it was barely enough to sustain life, but it was all they had. The fight for extra rations was constant. Some tried to bargain, others stole. Survival instincts overpowered morals. There was no room for fairness or kindness when hunger dictated every thought. A piece of bread could mean the difference between life and death. As darkness fell, the prisoners crawled onto their wooden planks, pressing against each other for warmth. Sleep was restless. The cold bit into their thin, tattered clothing, and nightmares haunted their brief moments of unconsciousness. Each night, some did not wake again. Their bodies were carried away in the morning, making space for new arrivals who would soon share the same fate. Time blurred. Days passed without distinction. Hope was dangerous. Those who dreamed of rescue or liberation often lost their will to fight. Reality crushed those who let themselves believe in an escape. The mind had to focus only on survival, one step at a time, one meal at a time. Thinking beyond the present was unbearable. The past was a painful memory, the future an impossible dream. Those who endured the endless cycle of suffering were not always the physically strongest. Strength alone was not enough. Those who had a reason to survive, a goal, a loved one, a purpose, stood a better chance. A man who believed he would one day reunite with his family pushed forward. Another who had unfinished work back home found the will to endure. The ones who had nothing to hold on faded away, their eyes losing light long before their bodies gave out. In the face of unimaginable cruelty, there were moments, rare but real, where humanity surfaced. A prisoner would share a piece of bread with another, even when they had so little to spare. A kind word, a small gesture, could offer more strength than a meal. Though suffering overshadowed everything, these fleeting acts of kindness proved that even in the worst conditions, the spirit could survive. Not all did, but some managed to hold on, not just to life, but to the dignity that the camp tried to strip away. The cycle continued, relentless, crushing all who could not keep up. The camp was designed to break the body, the mind, and the will. But among the dying embers of so many lives, some flames refused to be extinguished. They found something that even suffering could not take away, a purpose that kept them moving forward. That was what separated those who perished from those who endured. Chapter 4: Freedom Through Meaning. In the darkness of confinement, where every step is a test of endurance, the true essence of freedom becomes clear. The weight of suffering presses down, yet within this burden lies a hidden power, the ability to choose a response to any situation. Even when stripped of everything, there remains one final possession that cannot be taken away: the power to decide how to face hardship. Within the barbed wire fences, hunger gnaws at the body, exhaustion clouds the mind, and cruelty is a daily reality. Every action is dictated by forces beyond control. But even in these conditions, some find a way to rise above their circumstances. There are those who surrender to despair, and there are those who find a reason to hold on. The difference lies not in strength or intelligence, but in perspective. Those who endure find meaning in their suffering. They see a purpose beyond the present pain, a goal that keeps them moving forward. This could be the love for a distant family member, the hope of finishing work left incomplete, or simply the belief that their suffering must not be in vain. Among the prisoners, a man walks with an upright posture despite his tattered clothes. His body is weak, but his spirit is unbroken. When others grumble about their suffering, he does not join them. When food is scarce, he shares his portion with another. He knows that his life may end at any moment, but he does not allow that fear to dictate his actions. He chooses dignity over despair. Those around him notice. His silent strength gives them hope. Without saying a word, he teaches that freedom is not found in physical escape, but in the way one bears suffering. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering is shaped by perspective. The difference between those who wither away and those who hold on is the ability to assign meaning to their experience. A man forced to endure hard labor in freezing conditions may think of himself as cursed, but another man, working beside him, may see his suffering as a test, a challenge to prove his resilience. He sees himself as a survivor, not a victim. The same event, but two entirely different experiences. Hope is not found in escape from suffering, but in understanding its purpose. A man who once had everything taken from him can still find meaning in his pain. He imagines himself in a lecture hall, standing before eager students, explaining how he survived the horrors of his past. He envisions his suffering as a lesson that will one day help others. In this way, his suffering becomes bearable. It is no longer meaningless. It has a purpose. The moment he discovers this purpose, his suffering is transformed. Even in moments of extreme hardship, when death seems imminent, one can still exercise freedom. A man given only a small piece of bread each day may choose to eat it all at once, or he may choose to break it in half and share it with another. In doing so, he asserts control over his circumstances. He proves that kindness exists even in the darkest places. The decision to give, rather than to take, is an act of defiance against the forces that seek to strip away humanity. The ones who endure suffering with a sense of meaning are not necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who understand that suffering itself is not the enemy. It is the loss of purpose that leads to despair. The body can be weakened, but as long as the mind holds onto a reason to live, it will fight to survive. Even in the face of certain death, this inner freedom remains untouched. It is the one possession that no captor, no tormentor can ever take away. Many believe that happiness comes from avoiding pain, but true fulfillment is found in how one chooses to face suffering. Those who understand this walk with a different presence. They endure not because they have no choice, but because they see their suffering as a path to something greater. They are not broken by their hardships. Instead, they are strengthened by them. Every moment presents a choice, to give in to despair or to rise above it. The ones who survive are not simply lucky. They have chosen to hold on to meaning even when everything else is lost. At the heart of freedom is responsibility. No one can be forced to see meaning in suffering. It must be discovered individually. No situation is ever so dire that a person loses the ability to decide how to react. The conditions may be cruel, but the inner world remains untouched by external forces. The mind, when trained to seek meaning, will always find a reason to endure. It may not change the suffering, but it changes the way suffering is experienced. That is the difference between those who fade away and those who emerge stronger. No hardship is ever truly meaningless. In the most difficult moments, an opportunity exists to define oneself, to choose kindness in the face of cruelty, to hold on to dignity when everything else is stripped away, to see suffering not as an end, but as a test. The realization that meaning can be found in every experience changes everything. No longer is one a prisoner to fate. The power to choose how to respond remains, no matter the circumstances. This is the essence of true freedom. Chapter 5. Liberation and its Aftermath. The gates of the concentration camp finally opened, but for those who had been trapped inside, freedom did not come as an instant wave of joy. It was not a dramatic moment of celebration as one might expect. The prisoners, who had endured years of starvation, brutality, and constant fear, did not react with loud cheers or embrace one another in happiness. Instead, they stepped forward hesitantly, as if their bodies had forgotten what it was like to move freely. They looked around, unsure if this was really happening, unable to grasp that the nightmare had finally ended. In the days following their release, something strange happened. Instead of an overwhelming sense of happiness, many felt nothing at all. The years of suffering had numbed them so deeply that even the sight of the open sky, the feel of fresh air on their skin, and the realization that they were no longer under the control of cruel guards did not immediately bring relief. It was as if the mind had been so trained to expect pain that it refused to accept the idea of peace. Many could not even smile. The moment of liberation, which they had dreamed about for so long, did not feel real. As they walked out of the camp, someone in search of food, not caring about anything else. Hunger had been their master for too long, and it still controlled their thoughts. They ate quickly, not trusting that more food would be available later. Others wandered aimlessly, unsure of where to go. Their old homes, their old lives, everything had been taken away from them. The world outside had moved on while they had been trapped in misery, and now they did not know their place in it. The physical suffering in the camp had been unbearable, but what followed after their release was another kind of suffering, one they had not expected. Many felt lost, disconnected from the world. They had spent so much time trying to survive one more day that they had forgotten how to live. Some walked for hours in silence, staring at the land around them, waiting for emotions to return. But instead of happiness, many felt empty. Some tried to explain their feelings, but no one who had not been through the experience could understand. One man, after being freed, walked into a nearby field and looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful day, the sun shining brightly. He should have felt something, gratitude, joy, relief, but he felt nothing. He stood there for a long time, wondering why he did not feel free. Another prisoner, after stepping out of the camp, ran straight to a nearby farmhouse. When he saw the farmers, he spoke harshly, demanding food, behaving with an anger that even he did not fully understand. The years of suffering had made him bitter, and now, faced with kindness, he responded with rage. The emotions that had been buried for so long now erupted in unexpected ways. Many felt the weight of their past experiences pressing down on them. They had been treated like animals for so long that it was difficult to believe in their own humanity again. Some became aggressive, unable to control their emotions. Others felt guilt that they had survived, while so many had not. They thought of the friends who had been taken away, the faces they had seen disappear, and they asked themselves why they were still alive when so many others had perished. The burden of survival became its own kind of suffering. Some prisoners returned to their old homes, only to find that there was nothing left for them. Their families were gone. Their towns had changed. Neighbors who had once been friends now looked at them with suspicion or even hostility. Some had taken their possessions, moved into their houses, and did not welcome them back. The pain of realizing they had nowhere to go was overwhelming. They had survived the worst conditions imaginable, but now they faced another struggle, the struggle to rebuild a life that no longer existed. Even those who found their homes still standing often felt out of place. The people around them had not experienced what they had. They did not understand the nightmares, the constant fear, the memories that would not fade. Some tried to talk about their experiences, but others did not want to listen. They wanted to move on from the war, to forget the horrors, while the survivors could not forget. They lived in a different reality, separate from the world that had continued without them. Despite the hardships, some slowly began to find their way back to life. It was not an easy process. It took time, patience, and effort. Many found meaning in small things, in reconnecting with loved ones, in helping others, in telling their stories. Some chose to dedicate themselves to ensuring that the world never forgot what had happened. Others found peace in simple acts, watching a sunset, hearing the laughter of a child, feeling the warmth of the sun on their skin. These moments, once taken for granted, now carried a deeper significance. The journey from suffering to healing was not immediate. The scars remained, both on the body and in the mind. But over time, many came to understand something important. True freedom was not just about leaving the camp. It was about finding a way to move forward, to reclaim a sense of purpose, and to refuse to let the past define them. The road was long and difficult, but step by step, they learned to walk it. Chapter 6: The Will to Meaning. Every human being is driven by a deep need to find purpose in life. This need is stronger than the desire for pleasure or power. When people fail to find meaning, they feel empty inside. This emptiness can lead to frustration, anxiety, or even depression. It is not because life has no meaning, but because individuals have not yet discovered what makes their own lives meaningful. Many people suffer from an inner void. They try to fill this void with distractions like pleasure, material success, or constant entertainment. However, none of these truly satisfy them. Even those who seem to have everything often feel restless or unsatisfied. This is because what they truly seek is meaning, not just temporary happiness. Meaning is not something that can be given by someone else. It must be discovered by each person for themselves. One of the greatest challenges people face is the struggle to define what their life means. Some people live without questioning their purpose, simply following routines or doing what others expect of them. But sooner or later, everyone encounters moments where they ask, "Why am I here?" Or "What is the purpose of my existence?" These questions arise especially during difficult times. When people suffer, they begin to search for deeper meaning. If they fail to find it, they can lose hope. But if they succeed, they become stronger and more resilient. A person's meaning in life is not something fixed. It can change from moment to moment. Meaning is not a universal answer that applies to everyone in the same way. Each person's situation is unique, and so is their purpose. The meaning of life today may not be the same as it was yesterday, and it may change again tomorrow. This is why it is important to stay open to discovering new meaning in every stage of life. One of the most important ways to find meaning is through work. When people dedicate themselves to a task, a project, or a goal that is greater than themselves, they find purpose. This does not mean that everyone must do something extraordinary. Even small contributions to the world, when done with dedication and a sense of purpose, bring meaning to life. A doctor saving lives, an artist creating beauty, or a teacher inspiring students. All of them find purpose in their work. But even someone doing simple tasks can find meaning if they see the value in what they do. Another path to meaning is through love and relationships. When people love others deeply, they find purpose in caring for them, supporting them, and sharing experiences with them. Love connects people to something beyond themselves. It is not limited to romantic love. Love for family, friends, or even humanity as a whole can bring deep meaning. Many people continue to live despite hardship because they have someone they love, someone who gives their life significance. Suffering itself can also become a source of meaning. Pain and struggle are part of life, and no one can completely avoid them. But suffering becomes unbearable only when it is seen as meaningless. When people find a reason for their suffering, they gain the strength to endure it. A person who is ill may find meaning by inspiring others through their courage. Someone who has lost everything may still find purpose in helping others who suffer. The way a person chooses to face hardship can transform even the most difficult experiences into something meaningful. Modern life presents many challenges that make finding meaning difficult. Many people feel lost because they are overwhelmed with choices and distractions. In the past, life was often guided by traditions or religious beliefs that provided clear meaning. Today, many people struggle because they do not have a set framework for finding purpose. This leads to feelings of emptiness or confusion. Some people try to escape this emptiness by keeping themselves constantly busy, but busyness without meaning only deepens the void. Others may turn to harmful behaviors, like addiction or destructive habits, to numb the emptiness they feel. But none of these solutions truly address the real problem. The search for meaning is a deeply personal journey. No one else can tell a person exactly what their life's purpose should be. But there are ways to help people discover their own meaning. One of the most powerful ways is to take responsibility for one's own life. Instead of waiting for life to provide meaning, a person must actively seek it. Taking responsibility means recognizing that life is asking something from us, rather than us asking something from life. It is not about what we expect from life, but what life expects from us. People often wonder how they can find meaning when they face situations they cannot change. The truth is that meaning is not found in external circumstances, but in how a person responds to them. Even when facing challenges, suffering, or loss, meaning can be discovered. Every moment presents an opportunity to choose a meaningful response. A person who has lost their job can find meaning by using their time to help others. Someone who is sick can find purpose in inspiring others with their strength. Meaning is always present. It is just a matter of seeing it. Another key aspect of discovering meaning is focusing on the present moment. Many people worry too much about the future or regret the past. But meaning exists in the here and now. Every moment of life offers the chance to do something meaningful. It could be helping someone in need, creating something valuable, or simply appreciating the beauty of life. Living fully in the present, with awareness and purpose, leads to a meaningful life. Finding meaning is not about escaping pain or seeking constant pleasure. It is about embracing life in all its complexity and making choices that align with a deeper purpose. It is about recognizing that each individual has a unique role to play in the world and that their existence has significance. Even in the darkest moments, meaning is never lost. It is always waiting to be discovered by those who seek it. Chapter 7. The Essence of Logotherapy. Logotherapy is built on the idea that the primary drive in human beings is not pleasure or power, but the search for meaning. Every person, regardless of their circumstances, has the ability to find purpose in their life. This is not a philosophical speculation, but something deeply practical and applicable to everyday existence. When people struggle with inner turmoil, it is often because they have not discovered what gives their life meaning. Unlike traditional psychotherapy, which seeks to analyze past experiences or internal conflicts, logotherapy focuses on the future and the responsibilities that lie ahead. The search for meaning is what keeps a person going, even in the most difficult situations. One of the key ideas is that meaning in life can be found in 3 different ways. The first way is through work or deeds. When a person is engaged in meaningful work or a task that contributes to something larger than themselves, they experience a sense of fulfillment. It does not have to be grand or extraordinary. Even simple tasks, when approached with the right mindset, can become a source of meaning. A craftsman who takes pride in his work, a teacher who imparts knowledge, or a doctor who heals others all find meaning through their contribution. This sense of purpose drives people forward and gives them a reason to wake up each day. When a person feels that their work has no value or is disconnected from something greater, they often experience a sense of emptiness. Logotherapy teaches that instead of asking what life has to offer, a person should ask what life expects from them. The responsibility to act in a way that creates meaning is always present. The second way to find meaning is through experiences and relationships. Love is the highest of all human emotions and the strongest source of meaning. It is not only about romantic love, but also about deep connections with family, friends, and even with nature or art. A person who truly loves someone sees beyond their physical presence. Even if that person is absent or has passed away, the love remains and continues to give meaning to life. This is why remembering moments of love and connection can help a person endure hardship. Even in isolation, one can find strength in the memories of those they love. Love is not dependent on external conditions. It is a force that lives within and can be accessed at any time. The third way to find meaning is through suffering. This is perhaps the most difficult, but also the most profound. When suffering is unavoidable, it can still serve a purpose. If a person has to endure pain, loss, or hardship, they have the opportunity to transform it into something meaningful. It is not the suffering itself that is meaningful, but the way a person responds to it. When people face suffering with dignity, they grow stronger and develop a deeper understanding of life. Those who see suffering as meaningless often fall into despair, while those who find meaning in it can endure almost anything. This does not mean that suffering should be sought, but when it comes, it should not be wasted. Each moment of hardship presents an opportunity to rise above the situation and find a greater purpose. Logotherapy does not promise happiness, but offers a way to find fulfillment even in difficult circumstances. People often feel empty or lost when they lack meaning. This feeling is described as an existential vacuum. It manifests in boredom, restlessness, and a lack of direction. Many people try to fill this emptiness with pleasure, success, or distractions, but these things do not provide lasting fulfillment. The only true way to overcome this emptiness is by discovering personal meaning. No one can define meaning for another person. It is something that must be found individually. Life asks each person a question, and the answer is given through their actions and decisions. One of the key ideas is that humans have the freedom to choose their attitude in any situation. Circumstances may not always be in a person's control, but their response is. This ability to choose is what makes human beings unique. When faced with hardship, a person can decide whether to become bitter and defeated or to find strength and purpose. This power of choice remains even in the most extreme conditions. There are countless examples of individuals who have endured great suffering but maintained their inner freedom. Even when stripped of everything, a person still has the ability to decide their attitude. This understanding changes the way people view life. Instead of feeling helpless, they realize that they have control over their responses. This shift in perspective allows individuals to live with greater resilience and strength. Another important concept is that meaning is dynamic. It changes from person to person and moment to moment. What is meaningful today may not be meaningful tomorrow. This is why meaning cannot be given to someone else, but must be discovered through personal experience. A young student may find meaning in learning, while an older person may find meaning in passing on wisdom. A parent may find meaning in raising a child, while an artist may find it in creating. Even in the same life, meaning can shift over time. This is why a person must remain open to discovering new purposes as they move through different phases of life. Responsibility plays a central role in finding meaning. Each person is responsible for shaping their own life and deciding what meaning they will pursue. Avoiding responsibility leads to a sense of emptiness, while embracing it leads to fulfillment. Taking responsibility does not mean carrying unnecessary burdens, but rather recognizing that life presents challenges and opportunities that require a personal response. No one can escape this responsibility. Even those who feel that life is unfair must decide how they will respond. The way a person faces their responsibilities determines the depth of their meaning in life. Logotherapy also emphasizes that the human spirit is strong and can overcome even the greatest difficulties. This strength does not come from external factors, but from within. Many people underestimate their own ability to endure and find meaning. However, when faced with challenges, they often discover a resilience they never knew they had. The search for meaning is not always easy, but it is always worth pursuing. When people stop searching for meaning, they begin to drift through life without purpose. This is why it is essential to remain engaged with life and to continuously seek out new sources of meaning. One of the common misconceptions is that meaning must be something extraordinary. Many people believe that only great achievements or heroic acts give life meaning. However, meaning can be found in the simplest moments, a conversation, an act of kindness, or even in the way a person handles their daily struggles. The small things in life often carry the most significance. A person does not need to wait for a grand purpose to appear. They can create meaning in everyday actions. The search for meaning is a lifelong journey, and each moment presents an opportunity to discover new depths of purpose. The idea that life is constantly questioning us changes the way people approach their existence. Instead of waiting for happiness or fulfillment, individuals can actively shape their destiny. Life is not something that happens to people. It is something that requires a response. This perspective empowers individuals to take control of their lives and make choices that align with their personal values. The responsibility to create meaning is always present, and each person has the ability to answer life's questions through their actions. Ultimately, the principles of logotherapy provide a practical guide to living a meaningful life. Meaning can be found through work, relationships, and even in suffering. The ability to choose one's response to any situation is the key to inner freedom. Embracing responsibility leads to fulfillment, while avoiding it results in emptiness. The search for meaning is not about grand achievements, but about how a person approaches each moment. By remaining open to discovering purpose, individuals can navigate life's challenges with strength and resilience. The journey to meaning is deeply personal, but it is one that every person is capable of undertaking. Chapter 8: Existential Frustration and Neurosis. Existential frustration arises when a person struggles to find meaning in life. It is not an illness or a disorder, but a natural part of being human. People often feel frustrated when they fail to see a purpose in their existence, which can lead to feelings of emptiness, dissatisfaction, and distress. This frustration can manifest in different ways, and it is sometimes misdiagnosed as a psychological problem when it is actually a sign of a deeper, unresolved issue related to meaning in life. Many individuals experience existential frustration without realizing its true cause. They may feel restless, anxious, or lost without understanding that the root of their suffering lies in the absence of a meaningful goal. This condition is widespread in modern society, where people often lack direction and struggle to define their personal purpose. The lack of meaning is sometimes disguised as depression, aggression, or addiction. These issues arise because people are unable to find fulfillment in their daily lives. The deeper struggle is not just about overcoming pain, but about discovering a reason to endure it. One of the ways this frustration manifests is through what is called existential vacuum. This occurs when people feel that life is devoid of meaning. In earlier times, traditions and social roles provided structure and purpose, but in modern times, people are left to define their own meaning. Without clear guidance, many individuals feel trapped in a cycle of boredom, apathy, and unhappiness. This sense of emptiness can drive people to seek distractions, such as excessive entertainment, material pursuits, or unhealthy habits, in an attempt to fill the void. However, These temporary fixes do not provide lasting satisfaction because they do not address the real problem, the need for meaning. Many people believe that their dissatisfaction comes from external circumstances, but in reality, the problem lies within. If a person does not understand their purpose, no amount of external success or pleasure can bring lasting fulfillment. People may have good jobs, relationships, and financial security, yet still feel empty inside. This is because true satisfaction comes not from material gains, but from a sense of purpose. This frustration can also lead to what is known as noogenic neurosis. This is a type of psychological distress that arises not from physical or emotional conflicts, but from existential struggles. Unlike other mental health issues that stem from trauma or chemical imbalances, this condition comes from a failure to find meaning in life. It is a unique kind of suffering that cannot be treated with medication alone. Instead, the solution lies in helping individuals discover their personal purpose. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that suffering should always be eliminated. However, suffering itself is not the real issue. It is the lack of meaning that causes problems. When a person understands why they suffer, they can endure almost anything. This is why different people respond differently to similar hardships. One person may see difficulty as an unbearable burden, while another may view it as a challenge to overcome. The key difference is not the situation itself, but the way it is perceived. A meaningful life is not necessarily one without struggles. In fact, struggle can add depth and purpose to life. Many people who have faced great challenges have found ways to transform their suffering into something valuable. Instead of being crushed by hardships, they use them as opportunities to grow. This does not mean that pain should be sought out, but rather that when it is unavoidable, it can be given meaning. This perspective shifts the focus from suffering itself to what can be learned from it. Helping people find meaning requires a different approach from traditional therapy. Many forms of therapy focus on resolving past traumas or changing behaviors, but this does not always address the deeper issue of meaning. Instead, the focus should be on guiding individuals to discover their own unique purpose. Meaning is not something that can be given to a person. It must be found through personal experience. Each person's meaning is different, and it is shaped by their own life circumstances, values, and choices. There are several ways a person can find meaning. One way is through work or creative expression. When people engage in work that they find meaningful, they feel a sense of purpose. This does not mean that a job has to be prestigious or high-paying to be fulfilling. What matters is that the person sees value in what they do. When people feel that their work contributes to something greater than themselves, they experience fulfillment. Another way to find meaning is through love and relationships. Deep connections with others provide a sense of belonging and purpose. Love is not just about romantic relationships, but includes friendships, family, and even acts of kindness toward strangers. When people care for others, they move beyond their own struggles and find a greater sense of purpose. Loving relationships give people a reason to endure hardships as they see their suffering as part of a larger commitment to those they care about. Meaning can also be found in suffering itself. When pain is unavoidable, it can be transformed into something valuable. This does not mean that suffering is desirable, but rather that it can be an opportunity for growth. When people endure hardships with dignity, they demonstrate the power of the human spirit. Many of the greatest accomplishments in history have come from people who overcame adversity. Their struggles gave them insight, strength, and a deeper understanding of life. One of the most important lessons is that meaning is not something abstract or theoretical. It is something that must be lived. Each moment presents an opportunity to make choices that add to or diminish a sense of purpose. People must take responsibility for finding their own meaning rather than waiting for it to be given to them. This means actively engaging with life, seeking out experiences that matter, and making decisions that align with personal values. A common mistake people make is believing that meaning must be grand or extraordinary. In reality, meaning can be found in everyday moments. A person does not need to achieve world-changing success to live a meaningful life. Simple acts of kindness, dedication to a craft, or caring for a loved one can be just as meaningful as any great accomplishment. What matters is that a person feels that their actions contribute to something worthwhile. When people struggle with existential frustration, they often seek quick solutions. They may turn to distractions, addictions, or external achievements to try to fill the void. However, these things rarely provide lasting fulfillment. The true solution lies in understanding that meaning must be actively pursued. This requires effort, reflection, and sometimes even suffering. But those who take the time to seek meaning will find that their lives become richer and more fulfilling. One of the greatest dangers of existential frustration is the tendency to fall into despair. When people believe that their suffering has no meaning, they lose hope. This is why finding meaning is not just an intellectual exercise. It is a matter of survival. Those who see a purpose in life can endure hardships that might otherwise seem unbearable. The difference between those who give up and those who persevere is often their ability to see meaning in their struggles. This understanding of meaning does not require a specific belief system or philosophy. It is a universal truth that applies to all people, regardless of background or circumstances. Everyone has the capacity to find purpose, no matter their situation. This is what allows people to rise above their difficulties and create a fulfilling life. Ultimately, existential frustration is not a problem to be solved, but a challenge to be embraced. It is a sign that a person is searching for something deeper. Those who take the time to explore their own meaning will discover that life, even with all its hardships, can be deeply rewarding. The search for meaning is what makes life truly worth living. Chapter 9. The Meaning of Life. Life does not have a universal meaning that applies to everyone at all times. Instead, meaning is something that must be discovered by each individual in their own unique situation. The right path or purpose for one person may not be the same for another, just as the correct move in a game of chess depends on the specific position of the pieces at that moment. There is no single answer that fits every situation, but meaning is always present and waiting to be found. The importance of responsibility cannot be ignored. Every human being has the ability to decide what their life will mean, and this responsibility cannot be passed on to anyone else. It is not about asking what life will give, but instead realizing that life is constantly asking for an answer. The question is not what someone expects from life, but what life expects from them. Every moment presents a challenge, and the way a person responds shapes the significance of their existence. People often search for meaning in great accomplishments or grand achievements, but true meaning can be found in the simplest things. A person may discover purpose in their work, in the love they share with others, or in the way they endure hardships with dignity. No act is too small to be meaningful, and even the most difficult moments can hold significance if faced with the right attitude. The key is to recognize that meaning is not something given. It is something created through actions and decisions. Suffering is often seen as meaningless, but it does not have to be. When pain or hardship is unavoidable, it can still hold deep significance depending on how it is approached. A person who faces suffering with strength and determination gives their experience a purpose. The way they bear their burdens can inspire others, proving that even the most difficult circumstances can hold value. This does not mean seeking out suffering, but rather understanding that when it comes, it can be transformed into something worthwhile. Every individual is different, and so the meaning of life varies from person to person. The same experience may be meaningful for one and meaningless for another, depending on how they approach it. What gives one person purpose may not resonate with someone else, but this does not mean that meaning is absent. It simply means that it must be uncovered in a way that aligns with one's personal values and circumstances. There is no universal formula, but there is always an answer waiting to be discovered. Time plays an important role in shaping meaning. Life is fleeting, and experiences cannot be repeated. This is not something to mourn, but something to cherish. Every moment is unique, and because it will never come again, it holds special value. Just as a painter chooses each stroke carefully, knowing it will be part of the final masterpiece, a person must make choices with the understanding that each decision shapes their life story. The past cannot be changed, but it remains a part of existence, giving depth and richness to everything that follows. Many believe that pleasure and happiness should be the ultimate goal, but these things cannot be pursued directly. They come as a result of meaningful living. When a person focuses on doing something worthwhile, happiness follows naturally. Chasing happiness for its own sake often leads to frustration because it is a byproduct rather than an end goal. A meaningful life, however, brings a deeper and more lasting sense of fulfillment. Love is one of the most powerful sources of meaning. It allows a person to see the true essence of another human being and appreciate them not only for what they are, but for what they can become. Love goes beyond physical presence. It creates a connection that can endure even in separation. It gives strength in difficult times and offers a reason to keep going when everything else seems lost. Through love, a person finds purpose not only in themselves, but in the happiness and well-being of another. Work can also be a source of meaning, not just in terms of professional success, but in the sense of contributing something valuable to the world. It is not the status of a job that makes it meaningful, but the attitude with which it is approached. Whether a person is building something, caring for others, or creating art, work gains significance when it is seen as a way to make a difference. Even the most ordinary tasks can be filled with purpose when done with dedication and a sense of responsibility. There is no need to wait for life to provide meaning because it is already there, woven into every moment. The challenge is not in finding meaning, but in recognizing it. Each day presents new opportunities to create purpose, whether through actions, relationships, or even struggles. When someone realizes this, they gain the ability to shape their life into something significant and fulfilling. The answer to what life means is not hidden in abstract ideas or distant dreams. It is right in front of every individual, waiting to be embraced and lived. Chapter 10. The Transitoriness of Life. Life does not lose its meaning simply because it is short. Everything in existence moves forward in time, and nothing remains forever. Yet, this transience does not diminish its value. Instead, it gives everything a unique and irreplaceable importance. A person may believe that life would be more meaningful if moments could last indefinitely, but this belief misunderstands the very nature of meaning. The reality is that something becomes meaningful precisely because it is finite. If everything stretched endlessly, there would be no urgency, no depth, no reason to cherish any single moment. At any given time, a person stands between the past and the future. The past consists of everything that has already happened, moments of joy, moments of sorrow, choices made, experiences lived. The future, on the other hand, remains uncertain. It is a blank page, unwritten and unknown. Many live in fear of the future, worrying about what might happen or regretting what has already passed. But the past is not lost. Nothing that has been lived can be erased. Every action, every achievement, and every lesson remains forever stored in time. These cannot be undone, and because they have been lived, they hold permanent significance. Some believe that only what lies ahead has meaning, that the past is merely a shadow that fades. But this is an illusion. Every event that has taken place becomes part of the fabric of existence. A person who has loved, suffered, worked, or created has already given meaning to those moments. Even if an experience lasts only for a short time, its effect continues. A sunset may last for minutes, but its beauty does not vanish just because the sun eventually sets. A kind word spoken to someone may have taken only a second, but it may be remembered for years. A person who has completed an important task or left behind something of value has ensured that their life has had meaning, regardless of how much time remains ahead. Many people believe that life loses meaning when death approaches. They think that because something is coming to an end, everything before it becomes unimportant. But this is not true. Life is like a book. The last page does not erase the pages before it. Instead, it completes the story. Whether the book is long or short, what matters is how it was written. If a person has lived fully, if they have done what they could to shape their world, then their life is already full of meaning, no matter when it ends. Some may argue that if everything fades, then nothing matters. But this ignores the reality of human experience. A person who has acted with kindness, who has created something, who has loved, has left a mark on the world. That mark does not disappear. Even if no one remembers, the fact that something happened gives it eternal significance. A painter may create a beautiful piece of art that is later destroyed, but the act of creating it still had meaning. A person may dedicate their life to raising a child, even if they are later forgotten, but the love and effort they gave still mattered. Nothing that has truly existed can ever be erased. Everything a person does is recorded in time. Even the smallest actions have meaning because they become part of what has already happened. Regret often comes from believing that something has been lost forever. But the truth is, nothing lived is ever lost. It becomes part of the past, part of history, part of what has made the world what it is. A person's life is not measured by how much time they have left, but by what they have done with the time they have already lived. Some people live with the fear that they have not achieved enough, that their life has been wasted. But no life is wasted if a person has experienced, learned, or contributed in any way. A single meaningful moment can outweigh years of empty existence. If a person has ever loved deeply, helped another, or found joy in something beautiful, then their life has already contained something valuable. Many focus too much on what they have yet to accomplish and forget what they have already done. This way of thinking leads to an endless chase where nothing ever feels complete. But looking back on what has been achieved rather than what is missing reveals the true depth of life. Instead of worrying about how much time remains, a person should reflect on how much they have already made their time matter. There's an illusion that people must hold on to everything in order for it to be meaningful. But the truth is, meaning does not depend on permanence. A conversation that lasts only minutes can change a life. A single day can contain a lifetime's worth of experience. The fact that something ends does not mean it did not matter. If this were true, then no moment would ever be meaningful because all moments pass. Yet, people constantly find meaning in things that are temporary: a smile, a kind gesture, a beautiful piece of music. These things do not last forever, yet they are deeply valuable. Some believe that they must accomplish something great for their life to have meaning, but this is a misunderstanding. Meaning is not found only in grand achievements. It is found in everyday life, in small moments, in simple acts. A person who has lived with purpose, no matter how small their contributions may seem, has already made their life meaningful. Life should not be seen as something that must be completed before it has value. It already has value in the fact that it is lived. The moments a person has experienced, the relationships they have formed, the struggles they have faced, all of these are part of their story. Even if life ended today, it would not erase everything that has come before. There is no need to fear the passing of time. Time is not an enemy, but a container for everything that has already been lived. As long as a moment has existed, it remains part of reality forever. A person who has done something good, who has found joy, who has given something to the world, has already ensured that their life has meaning. Nothing can take that away. In conclusion, here are some key lessons from the book. Number 1, suffering is inevitable, but how we respond to it defines us. Number 2, meaning can be found in work, love, and even suffering. Number 3, freedom lies in choosing one's attitude, even in extreme conditions. Number 4, happiness should not be pursued directly. It is a byproduct of meaningful living. Number 5, responsibility gives life meaning. Each person must find their own purpose.